Hilchis Sanhedrin va'inshna masur mulahem perek chamishi. So we learned that there are different madregas of a bezin. There's a bezin of Ayin Aleph, there's bezin Agodl, and then there's a bezin Sanhedrin Ktana, which is a bezin of Chav Gimel, and then there's a bezin which was a bezin Shel Shleisha, and then we can learn also there's other shiurim. So here the Rambam will discuss which things have to be done dafka through bezin Agodl, which things have to be done through a bezin of Chav Gimel. In other words, not enough a bezin Shel Shleisha. And what's the various different shiurim of different things that need a bezin? Perek Chamishi. Eima midden melech el al pi bezin shel shivim ve'echad. To establish a mimano a melech, you have to have a bezin shel shivim ve'echad, and the bezin shel shivim ve'echad are masking that he should be the melech. And vein oisen Sanhedrin Ktana l'chol shevet v'shevet u'l'chol ir v'ir el bezin shel shivim ve'echad. So there would be a minui of a bezin Ktana, sai b'chol ir v'ir, and we learned also b'chol plach u'plach. Here the Rambam is saying that it's a plach means over here when there's a shevet, there's a yoris, which all belong to one shevet, and then there's the bezin, which is the bezin of the shevet. That would be the bezin of the plach. So in order to mimana these bati dinim, you need the bezin of shivin ve'echad. The bezin agodl amamana, the bezin the Sanhedrin Ktana. And ve'ein donen leis a shevet shehudach kulei. So there's a musig of a shevet shehudach kulei. There's a din whether it means kulei or rubei. There's a din which we'll learn b'hamshich, and we learn in Hilchos Avodah Zarah. That's the din of Ir Nidachas. Ir Nidachas is a ir which Rubam will Oved Avodah Zarah, and in that din, then the din is that instead of getting skila, which a normal yochid gets, so dinam is besayev, and also there's another din that all their mammon is also nevad. You burn the city. That's a special din of Ir Nidachas. Over here, we're not talking about the Ir Nidachas. We're talking about a shevet, that this shevet was hudach kulei or hudach rubei, and it's not an ir, and they don't have the dinim of ir and nidachas, and nevertheless there's a din that since it's a shevet shehudach kulei, they need a bezin of Ayin Aleph to paskin on the people of the shevet to know technically how it works, because l'chura each person is a yochid. So bishleim by ir and nidachas, there's a din taka that once they established that they were all Evdei Avodah Zarah, so then again they redo the Batidinim, they set up Batidinim, then they establish that again that Rubam were Eved Avodah Zarah, and then they get a din of Ir Nidachas. But Shevet Shehudach Kulei, L'chura, I mean, each one was a yochid. Then when you make the cheshbon, it comes out Hudach Kulei. You have to know how does it work, when does it start this din that is Ayin Aleph. But I'll call upon an Ein Donen Leis HaShevet Shehudach Kulei, unless you have a bezin of Ayin Aleph, V'leis Nevi HaSheker, V'leis Kein Godel B'din Nefoshes, Ele B'bezin HaGodel. Aval dini momen is bishleisha. So a Kein Godel's dini momen is bishleisha. Masha'inkin a dini nefashas of a Kein Godel, that's ba'ayin aleph. Is again, so to be, when you maimed the melech, you need a bezin of Ayin Aleph. You need to be maimed the Sanhedrin Ktana, you need a bezin of Ayin Aleph. To be done a shevet shehudach kulei, to be done a novi sheker, and to be done a Kein Godel b'din nefashas, all of them needs a bezin shel Ayin Aleph. V'chein, Ein nasa zokin mamri. There's a din of a zokin mamri, someone that goes against knows when bezna godel paskin, and he goes ahead and paskins fakert and what the bezna godel was paskin. He didn't accept what the bezna godel did, and he went ahead and paskin fakert than the bezna godel. So this din of a zokin mamri is only legabi bezna godel. Mashenkin if he's going against a regular bezna, so then it wouldn't apply. V'chein ein nasa zokin mamri. V'loi oinshin ir nidachas, the oinish that you give to ir nidachas, which is, as we mentioned, sayif, and also that all the nechosim are nevad, and v'loi mashkinas haseita. So when you have a seita, so you have to be mashka the mayim hamaorim. So you bring her also to the bezna godel. V'loi mashkinas haseita ela bebezna godel. Ve'im misifan al ho'ir v'al ho'azoris. There's a musig of being moisif on Yerushalayim with a carbon teda, and all that is there's a musig of being moisiv on the Azara. So the Seder being moisiv on the ear and the Azaras, the whole process of being moisiv on the ear and the Azaras has to be done through the Bezna Godel. And also, v'lei mitzian l'melchemes harishus, when you go out l'melchemes harishus and make the decision to go out l'melchemes harishus, and also u'lemedidas hachol, by the din by Egla Rufa, and as you find a chol basoda, le'neda mihu ko, he goes, you have to go and measure from the Chol to the nearest city. So the people that are involved in that Medidas HaChol is from the Bezna Godel, the 5 Dayanim from the Bezna Godel. Medidas HaChol El al pi Bezna Godel. Shnemer kol adover HaGodel yaviu alecha. So from the kol adover HaGodel yaviu alecha, we learn out that these things go into the cloud of Davar Agadol, and Memela they need a Bezin Agadol. Halacha Beis. Ein donen dinin nefoshes bepachis mi'esru mishleisha. Shehin Sanhedrin Tana. In order to be done dinin nefoshes, it has to be dafka of Sanhedrin Tana, which is esru mishleisha. That's bein dinin nefoshes Adam, bein dinin nefoshes Beimah. There's a limud that says that kmisa bailam kach kmisa asher, that just like a bailam, the Adam needs esru mishleisha in order to kill him. So al derech a behema, in order to have a din misa on a behema, also you need esru mishleisha. Lefichach in donim sheir aniskel, which a sheir aniskel is chayiv skila, and also v'lei behema hanerbas aherevas, which also they get killed. Ella bebezin shel esru mishleisha. Unless there's a bezin esru shleisha, you need a bezin esru shleisha to establish that this behema is chayiv misa. Afilo ari v'dei v'namaru bardlus shehin tarbus, which they are domesticated, v'yesh lehem bailim, and shehi misu, is misasim b'esru mishleisha, because in order for them to be chayiv misa, you have to establish that they would nischavnu lari, and therefore you need esru mishleisha to establish that they would taka nischavnu lari, and only then are they chayiv misa. Avol nochash shehemis is echad herigesi. By a nochash, even though we're talking about a nochash, which is also owned by someone, but Tesa says in Sanhedrin that the pshat is that since we nemon b'pshitos, that the nochash was nischavim larik, so there's by a regular, the other things, the ari, the naman, the bardalas, over there we have to first establish they were taking nischavim larik. Masha'inkin over there, we nemon the nochash, we assume that is the nischavim larik, so therefore you don't need to have a diun in esru mishleisha. You don't need b'chal a diun. Nochon shehemis, if we know that he was hemis, so then it's even echad heirik. Halacha gimel. Hamaitzi Shemra. Now, Hamaitzi Shemra, the person is tining that he was leimotzav psulim by his wife, and that she was in Satachtov while she was an arusa. Now, when he actually brings the Edom to Taina that she was in Satachtov while she was an arusa, so it's pashut that you need esru mishleisha. Because lepeil, we're talking about din and nefashos. If she was taka, it's in Satachtov while she was in arusa, she's chayiv skila. If she was a naira, but I'll call upon him, so she's chayiv skila. So that's what we're dealing with over there, a naira psula. So memela, so it's pasha that you need esem mishleisha. The chiddush over here is that even though lepeil he doesn't yet have edim, which say that she was in Satachtov, he's coming along in tining that he was like what's psula. And Memelis, and now he's looking for Edom, or he's trying to find Edom. So it's like the Tchilas Adin, maybe he's dealing with that he should be able to divorce her without a ksuba. But I'll call upon him, it's like Tchilas Adin. So this is so normally you would say right now we're only dealing with Din Imamanis, not Din Nefashos. But there's a concern that maybe it'll develop into Din Nefashos. So then you're going to have Ed Dayanim, and then Bameli will be like Mizalzel and the original Dayanim. They weren't enough for the Hemshah of the case. So therefore, lachatchila, when a person comes, when again, Meitzi Shemra, even though at this point in time the din is only din imaminus, nevertheless he should have esem mishleisha. That's his din. Hameitzi Shemra ein don neisi tchila ela bebezin shel esem mishleisha. Why? Mipnei sheyesh bedinei tzad l'din nefashos. Because Shema yeh davar emes v'tisok alabas. Now the shaila Shema yeh davar emes v'tisok alabas means maybe they'll also bring back Edom. I mean, it sounds like Kila from the Rambam that we're bringing Edom, and the shaila is maybe it'll be Amos. Well, if you're bringing Edom, beneged that she was in, so pashut, it's pashut that you need esem mishleisha. The chiddush is that even if right now you don't have Edom at all, leinamno divri abal uboha of letovi b'knas is dina b'shleisha. Now the din of bedina b'knas would be, the case would be, you have to say the case that he taka brought Edom in a bezdin shel esem mishleisha, and then the father brought Edom to be mazim those Edom, and those Edom that came to say that she was in Satachta v'ataka chayiv bisa, and that's all being done in the Bezdin Shel Esem Mishleisha. But now there's a new din Torah. Once it was established that he was a Meitzi Shemra, so now the father has to go ahead and be Teveya, the Baal for the moment, for the Meya Kesef, that he's chayiv as being Meitzi Shemra. So in other words, and that he could do it in the Bezdin Shel Shleisha. It's not like Memela. There would be a svara to say once the father brought Edom, and there were mazim those Edom. So l'chura Bezdin says that these Edom are chayiv bisa, and Bezdin say that the Baal is chayiv already the moment. But we already learned in other places that by knossos it works that there has to be a special tviya on the moment. In other words, once we establish that he was taka moitzi shemra, and Memela those Edom So obviously she doesn't get killed, and obviously those Eidim which were involved in being Meitzi Shemra, which tried to kill her, so they get killed. That's the din. Vasisam lekashazam lasis lochev. Now there's a new din that the husband has to pay the knas, and that din has to be a tviyah. That has to be a tviyah of the father, and that tviyah of the father could be in the bezin of shleisha. That's what he's saying. Boa ba'la tavi b'knas is din b'shleisha. Now, so Bekitzer, we learned over here that din in the nefashos has to be dafka b'esem b'shleisha, side din in the nefashos of adam, side din in the nefashos of a behema, and also even b'negei tchilas of a dover, which could develop in din in the nefashos, like by Meitzi Shemra, should also be done in a bezin shel esem b'shleisha. Uminayin she'in don din in the nefashos ela b'esem b'shleisha is afal pi shedivrei kabbalah. Mem is the divrei kabbalah. Allah chal v'eish misinai. But nevertheless, there's an asmach and a pasuk. Arei u'emer v'shaftu eida. So one pasuk says v'shaftu eida, and then the following pasuk it says v'hitzilu eida. So Chazal darshan eida shifetes v'eida matzeles. That in one din Torah you have this an eida which is being shifetes and an eida which is being matzeles. Eida shifetes v'eima mechayven v'eida matzeles v'eina mezakin. And ve'ein eida pchuses me'asara. So we have a limud that there's one din Torah taking a place, and there's an eida shifetes and an eida matzeles, which means there's 10 people saying l'schus and 10 people saying l'chiyuv. Is hareyesim u'mesif shleisha. You need another 3. Why? Kedei shelihei bezin shokol v'yehei be'achar rabin lahatis. Now the din is that by din in the fashis, as we'll learn, you could only be mechayivim if there's 2 more mechayivim than mezakim. So in other words, if you'll have 10 mezakim and 10 mechayivim, you wouldn't really be able to be mechayivim unless there's 22 being, unless there's another 2 being mezakim. So which means that we have to add at least another 2 to this bezin. If you have Eid Matzelis, Eid Shefetas, you'd have to add another 2 to this bezin in order to have Eicha Timtza to be mechayven. And but you can't just add 2 because then it'll be a bezin shakal. So Mamela, it's a smachta that you add 3. So Bekitzer, the Ikra Dikadin that a bezin has to be Elesim Shleisha, it's a Kabbalah. But there's a smach from the pasuk because it says v'shaftu eida v'tzilu eida, and Mamela we say that in one din Torah there's 10 people being mezaka, 10 people being mechayev. He said in order for him to actually have a chiyuv, to be achir rabin lahatis, there has to be a chiyuv. This only would be if there would be 22 and 12 are saying l'chayev, whereas 21 could be mezaka. A rave of mezaka is enough, one rave, one person. Mashayin can be mechayev, you need 2 people. Memela, you can't have 22 people in a bezin because it's a bezin shakel. So it comes out that you have 23. Halacha dalet. Makis b'shleisha. To give makis, bezin should give malchus, it has to be b'shleisha. You're supposed to be made to see that he shouldn't be yomus, but it's possible. Nevertheless, malchus is b'shleisha. Arifa so egla b'chamisha. When you go and you go and to measure to see how close is the ayoris to the cholol. So you have to go. We take from the bezin agadol, but how many people come from the bezin agadol? We learn of shiftecha, ziknecha. We learn now that it has to be 5 because 2 and 2 and the aim bezin shakol, so it's 5. Is arifa sha'egel bechamisha. Now this is all lashon mishnah. Arifa sha'chodesh, ibur achodesh is b'shleisha. Now the din is by when you kaver ish chodesh. So if the Adam saw the levana the night going into the 30th, so then on the 30th the bezin says mekudesh. If they didn't say it, if they didn't see it, so then lepeil the Rish Chedesh on the 31st day, and Bam is the 31st day doesn't need kiddush, it doesn't need any kiddush. So according to one man Dami Gemara, it's Loshna Mishnah Ibur Achedesh B'Shleisha. One man Dami Gemara means that day when you mekadesh the 30th, which the 30th is the day that if you wouldn't be mekadesh it, the chodesh before would become a chodesh mu'uber, would be considered like an extra. It would be an extra day, so to speak. That's why it's called a chodesh mu'uber. So that kiddush achedesh that happens on the yom ha'ibur, that's b'shleisha. So ibur achedesh b'shleisha really means kiddush achedesh b'shleisha. That's one man da'am pshat in the Mishnah over there, which is l'chura the pashtus of the way the Rambam paskins. Loshna ibur achedesh b'shleisha also could mean that to decide that this chodesh is going to be mu'uber. Because lepeil, we know that it's not going to happen. It's not shaykhis that the levana should be yirah. So that's also b'shleisha. That knows the establishment that this chodesh is going to be a chodesh mu'uber. That's another mandam in Gemara. Halacha zayin. Ibur hashana b'shiva. When you make a decision that the shana should be a shana mu'uberes, so it's b'shiva. You start off with 3, but eventually you finish off to make the decision is b'shiva. like we learn in Kiddush HaChedesh. V'chol elu smuchim k'mei shebiyanu. All the dayanim which we mentioned until now, in other words, when there's a bezin of Chav Gimel, b'negei din and nefoshes, and al derazeh b'negei makis, which is shleisha, narifas ha'evgla, all of these things have to be dafka a bezin of people that are smuchim. Now, dini knosis, kegoin gzeles, v'chavoles, v'tashlumi kefil, v'tashlumi arba, v'chamisha, v'heinis v'amafata. Now, kefil, tashlumi arba, v'chamisha, einis v'amafata is poshut, that they're knosis. The Rambam holds that chavoles are also knosses. In other words, again, Nezek and Tsar also has a din of knas. Now, gzelis, even though bepashas gzelis isn't a knas, because gzela pays the keren, and the din is that if you're moide b'gzela, you're chayiv. But nevertheless, the legabi this din that you need a bezin of mumchin, so you need shleisha mumchin, so that also goes into the gather of knosses. So dini knosses gzeles, the chavoles, v'tamshumei kefil, v'tashlumei abba v'chamisha, v'hainis v'amafatu ki'etzeben, ein donaneson elo shleisha mumchin. You need shleisha mumchin. What does mumchin mean? V'heina smuchin b'Eretz Yisrael, that they received smicha in Eretz Yisrael. Avol sh'ar dinim mamnes, but we're talking about other dinim mamnes, other than the ones that were just mentioned, kigain heidois, v'halvois, a person was made that he owes money, or we have Adam that he lent someone money. So these things, einon tzrichen mumchin, el afilu shleisha edietas, or vafilo echad mumche. Echad mumche means a mumche l'rabban, like we learned in Perek Beis. There's someone that's a mumche l'rabban, so kibidan dinim mamnes, is also don eso. Lefichach, now as a result of that, since you don't need mumchim, so lefichach donen behidois valvois ukietzman b'chutz laretz. So it can be done in chutz laretz. Aval pi she'ein bezin shel chutz laretz elikim. They don't go into the gather of elikim of a bezin, which we say v'nikra v'balabais elikim. But nevertheless, shlichus bezin shel Eretz Yisrael esim. They could do the shlichus of the bezin of Eretz Yisrael. Some Musik called, the Gemara says that they're doing the shlichus of the bezin shel Eretz Yisrael, and ve'ein lehem rishus loden dini knasus b'shlichusa. In the shlichus that they have is only to be done dini mominus, but not to be done dini knasus. Is nachama. We learned before that dini knasus only a bezin of Eretz Yisrael that have smicha in Eretz Yisrael could have. Benegei dini mominus, first the Rambam says, you could do even a bezin, which a shar dini mominus, you don't really need a bezin of smuchim. You can have a bezin which aren't smuchim. Then the Rambam says that the reason why you're done hidois valvois and chutz laretz, even though the bezin shel chutz laretz doesn't really have a din of a bezin, but nevertheless they do shlichus of bezin of Eretz Yisrael. Now the shaila is lechura, since we're saying that hidois valvois doesn't really need a bezin, doesn't need smuchim. So why do we need that in order for them to do this din, they have to have dafka because of the shlichus of Eretz Yisrael? L'chura, they should be able to do it mitzad atzmo. So on that, the Nesivis explains that be'emes taka, even regular dinim mominus also, they don't have a right to be done. The only reason, the Rambam said that they could be done, the Rambam L'chatchila meant in the beginning of this halacha, they could be done because there's the shlichus of the bezin of Eretz Yisrael. This is meikra the din. In order to be done any din, you have to go into the gather of elikim of a bezin, which is a bezin of smuchim. Lepeil, there's some musik that the bezin of smuchim gives a shlichus to the bezin of Eretz, to bezin of chutz laretz, to those people that aren't smuchim, that they should also be able to be done dinim mominus, and that gufa is also mugbal, as we'll soon learn. Only though dinim mominus, which is davar matzui, and there's a hefsid, so then that gives them the heter to be able to done this dinim mominus. But meikra the dinner, even though it's not really the lashon Rambam, the Rambam seems to be saying that be'etzim they're allowed to. But on the other hand, we see over here that the only reason why they're allowed to be done the dinim mominus is because shlichus of the bezin of Eretz Yisrael esim, and therefore, and that shlichus only works for dinim mominus and not for dinim knossos. Halacha tes. Ein don bezin shel chutz laretz ele dinin hametzuyin tomet. So first of all, it has to be a din which is matzui. It's a regular case. And also, v'yesh b'm chsaron kis. There's two tanoim. It has to be a davar matzui, and v'yesh b'm chsaron kis kigain hidois valvois or umazik mama chaveris. See, these are things which happen regularly, and it's also if you're not done, so someone's losing money. Aval dvarim she'einu mitzuyim, aval bi sheyesh b'm chsaron kis kigain behema shechavle b'chaverta. The din of a behema was chevel b'chaverta. So that's something which is a chsaron kis, but it's not matzui. Oy dvarim hamitzuyim, aval ein b'm chsaron kis gain tashlumi kefil, which is knossos, is ein donanes and dayana chutzlars. So you saw that the reason why dayana chutzlars don't have the shlichus legabi knossos is because there's no chsaron kis. V'chein kol haknossos shekotzutzu eisen chacham kigain tekel lechaveirei Or Usaiter is Chaveru Kiyesva, which Mchevel Mazik. The Rambam said a whole regime of various different things that Chazal instituted a certain fixed amount of money for doing a type of Hezek, is all in Goivenes and Dayana Chutzlars, because that goes into the gather of Knossos, and Dayana Chutzlars are not Goive Knossos. And also the Cholam Mishalim Chotzi Nezik, a person Mishalim Chotzi Nezik, L'moshel, is share, which is share tam, and is Mishalim Chotzi Nezik, is Ein Goivenes and Dayana Chutzlars. He not gave a Dayana Chutzlars because it has the din of Knas. In other words, Dayana Chutzlars is a goive moment, someone that was mafsid someone money, and it's a dover hamotzui. So then Dayana Chutzlars are goive that, and that's also shlichos of the Dayana versus Yisrael. Masha'inkin, when we're dealing with something which is a Knas, so you're not really being goive because of the hefset. This share was mafsid someone money, so be'atzim, since the share is a share tam, so the moment is your potter. The mitzvah din that a behemoth that was zika is chayiv mama yopater. Elamai, there's another din that you have to pay knas, so that knas is not coming for the hefset. So therefore, ein gavin they said ayana chutz lords. Chutz bechatzina as extraders, the pnei shuhu mam and vein knas. Chatzina as extraders, halach l'meish mesinai. Even though it's regal, it's a din of regal, tulda the regal, but nevertheless you only pay a chatzinazik, but that chatzinazik has a din of moment. It's kilu neymar, but again chatzinazik by a tam. The pshat is the chiddush is that you have to pay the chatzinazik. In other words, be'emes you don't have to pay anything. It's min knas you have to pay a chatzinazik. By chatzinazik is fakert. Be'etzim you have to pay a nezik shalom. But there's Allah l'meish mesinai that you don't pay half of that nezik shalom which you're supposed to pay. But that half that you are paying, you're paying like a regular mazik, mele yechayiv, that the regular moment, mele yechayiv. Halacha yud, kol hanishem ke'eved, ein goyven oisei dayana chutzlars. So it's like a new rule. We had a rule before that it has to be a davar hamotzui, then we learned that it has to be a hefset, and now we're saying that's a new thing, that kol hanishem ke'eved, that when you shots up a person ke'eved, so then ein goyven oisei dayana chutzlars, you're not goyven dayana chutzlars. Lefichach, Adam shechavel b'chaveri, a person was chavel b'chaveri, is ein goyven hanezek v'atzar v'abeishes shu chayvem dayana chutzlars. So nezek tzar and beishes, you're not goyven. Dayana chutzlars are not goyven nezek tzar and beishes. Avol sheves v'ripui goyven mipnei sheyesh b'em chsaron kis, because lapel he's losing the time that he was able to work. Now there's a ripui. He has to heal himself. V'chein heiru hageinu v'amru shemaisem b'chol yem ligbeis sheves v'ripui pebavol. So that's like the Rambam is saying two din. First of all, he's saying kol hanishem ke'eved is ein goyven oisei dayana chutzlar. It's like it's a new rule, and then the Rambam says that sheves v'ripui is goyven b'chutzlar. Now l'chura this din of hanishem be'eved that ein goyven oisei dayana chutzlar, the Rambam doesn't say why. It's like a new din in hanishem ke'eved and goyven oisei dayana chutzlar. So it could be there could be a svara to say the Rambam said in Hilchas in Hilchas Chevel Umazik. The Rambam said that the emes when a person is chayvel b'chaverei, so the pasuk says ayin tachazayin. So b'lepel it's not ayin tachazayin. You have to pay the mom. So the Rambam says that the gather hadvarim is that be'emes hoyiroi there should be ayin tachazayin. Elamai Chazal the Torah told us that instead of having ayin tachazayin, you give like kilo the koifer for the ayin that you are mazik, and memela that's how you pay. You pay in order as a koifer. So in other words, the etzem din would be ayin tachasayin. The reason why you pay is together like a koifer. And the Rambam brings the pasuk l'sikho kefer l'nefesh yitzech. L'nefesh yitzech you don't take kefer, but for a aver you are taking kefer. So mela comes out when a person is mazik someone and lepel, he's paying l'mashal the dom of what he was worth. He's not really paying for that hezek. That's not really the gather of the hezek. Person caused someone to lose his arm, so that person, that hezek is shalei berach of how much that he would be worth as an eved. Be'emes, the meikar the dinner would be yad tachas yad. Elamai, the Torah says that you can be paid the your yad by paying the dmei of his yad. So memela, that's also could be in a gather if it's not a hefsid moment. In other words, you're not paying for a hefsid moment over here. You're paying in order to be paid to yourself from what should have been ayin tachazayin. And memela, so therefore, that's the din of kol hanishim ke'eved and gave an eisa le'ana chutzlars, because the nishim ke'eved is a different type of gather of payment. And memela is and gave an eisa le'ana chutzlars. And therefore, adam shechavu b'chaveri, you don't get the nezek, and tsar zikr, there's no like hefsid moment over here in the tsar. And al derez the baishas, we're not talking about a hefsid moment. There's a chiv. The Torah was mechayiv for the tsar you caused and for the baishas you caused. But lepel is not a gather of hefsid moment, and therefore it's not nichlal in those things that shlichusei of the Dayanim and Eretz Yisrael, that the Dayanim Mechutzlars, the Dayanim Mechutzlars that don't have smicha. Halacha Yudalef. Now behema she'izikas adam, a behema that was mazikas adam, ein goyven niskei Dayanim Chutzlars, mipnei shehu davar she'eni matzui. So since it's davar she'eni matzui, so that's why in goyven niskei Dayanim Chutzlars. Now the shaila is l'chur over here is also is a nishim kevet. Over here is also a nishim kevet. In other words, how would you assess the nezik that the behema was mazik adam l'chura? Also, you have to be nishim kevet. So the Ram just said before kol nishim kevet and gave him mena dayan chutzlaritz. Now the Ram is saying the reason why by a behema is because it's a davar sheini matzos, which is sorich iyun. The ma'aseh is that there's be'emes a difference between the chi of nezik that a adam shehizik adam as opposed to the chi of nezik of a behema shechavel b'adam. And just we discussed in some hilchos nezikin that a behema shezika adam and lepel the person was moida that he was behema shezika adam, he'd be chayv. Adam shechavel ba'adam and he's moida that he was chavel, he's potter. Masha'inkin a behema shezika adam is chayv, which you have to understand why. So it's a different gather of the chi of tashlumin. So mele it could be that Adam shezika adam is taka potter. Adam shezika adam so he's potter, so as a din of knas. And therefore, Dayana Chutzlars can't be goyvet. Mashenkin a behemish chavel ba'adam be'emes he would be able to be goyvet. It doesn't have a din of knas. The only reason why he's not goyvet is because it's not a davar motzi. I'll call upon Nachamal Allah Yudalef. Behema shezikas adam and gave in this case Dayana Chutzlars mepnei shu davar she'eni motzi. Aval adam shehizik behemes chaverei is mishalim nezik shalom b'chol makom. Kimisha korek susei yeshaver kelev yikatzes n'tiyesa. That's a regular mazik and therefore you're chayv. V'chein behema sheizika b'shein v'regel is a hail v'hu medis lehem b'tchilasa, so therefore is areu davar matzui, that's called a davar matzui, and v'geven they said dayan chutzlaris. Dayan chutzlaris are given. Bein sheizika behem acheres ken shnischach ba ayach leperish adaka lochlam ukiyeseben. Bein sheizika echlem v'kelim shechayavis alei nezik shalom. Hakel gave him dayan chutzlaris. So a behema that was mazik b'shein v'regel, whether the behema was mazik a behema was mazik Paris, a regular case of shein v'regel. In all these cases, the you gave an oised dayan chutzlaris. Avol im hoisa tama. But if this behema was originally a tap, legabi a certain inyan, v'huado and it became a mu'ah to that, like one nezik, a keren, and al derezeh there's chamisha ma'aseh tamim that there is in the behema. Is in hoisa tama v'huada v'hizika ken shenoshcha einokcha eirovtza ibata einokva. These are the chamisha ma'aseh tamim that's in the behema. The din is engaged in a nezik hazeh shalom dayan chutzlaris. Halacha yudalid v'lei kol hamishal mapiatzmei gave me mena dayan chutzlaris. So generally, a meida b'knas is the potter. So those things that when you're meida and you're potter, which means that it's a din of knas. So then is ain't given a sedayan chutzlaritz. Now there are those things that when you're made you're chayiv. So l'chur has a din of mammon. So the Ram is saying even though you would be made you'd be chayiv, but that doesn't necessarily mean that given a sedayan chutzlaritz. Because to be given dayan chutzlaritz, you have to have the two tanoim. First of all, it has to be a davar matzui, and also it has to be a hefsid mammon. So there could be a hechatimtza where you're made. There was no hefsid mammon, you're still chayiv. And al derez there could be a hechatimtza where it's not matzui and you're still chayiv. Al moida. But on the other end, Dayan Eretz Yisrael, Dayan Chutzlaris won't be given. That's what he's saying. V'lei kol hamishal mapiatzmi gave him Dayan Chutzlaris, Sharei, Abgam, V'haboishes, V'hakoifer. Bgam is the Bgam that you pay. Besides the Chamishim of the Oinus and Mafata, you have to pay also for the Dmei Abgam, which you will give him to the Naira. And V'haboishes, a person caused so embarrassment. V'hakoifer. So all of these things is Mishal of Odm al Piatzmi, Kegen Shomar, Pitisi Bitish Pleni. So he doesn't pay the knas, but he has to pay the b'gam, or v'hei sheri is plainly, and lepel that was a sher amud, so he has to pay the koifer. Is nevertheless and gave an esed dayan chutzlaritz, either because it's not a hefsid, moshe by beishes, or because it's not davar matzi, like hei sheri is plainly. Halacha tezvav. Dine gromis, the din is that you cause someone hezek, is einon kiknosis, and therefore v'gave an eson v'donen bem b'chutzlaritz. So just like all dini mominus, which are matzui, and there's a hefsid, so donen bem dayan chutzlaritz. So al der is a dine grama, we learn various different dine grama which you're chayiv for, and that's chayiv also dayoni chutz la'aretz. V'chein din ha-moiser mamen chaveri, someone was moiser mamen chaveri to goyim and caused them a hefsid. Is aval pishul yosem ma'isa, he only spoke to the person and he told them where this person's things are. So goyim oisen dayoni chutz la'aretz. Halacha Yud Zayin. Minig ha-yeshivas b'chutz la'aretz, aval pisha ein goyim shom knas, is menad neise at sheyefayis l'baldinei eyali imei l'din l'Eretz Yisrael. So in other words, Lepel, he's in Chutz La'aretz, and Be'em is such a dintera, the Dayoni Chutz La'aretz can't pass him, but nevertheless they put this mazik into a nidui, and they say until he pays the nizik a certain amount of money, which they assessed how much that's amount of money, which is appropriate, so he's benidui until he actually gives that money, or Yali Imei l'din l'Eretz Yisrael. He has the option to go to Eretz Yisrael, to dintera, to smuchim. Once he gives that share, which the Dayanim assessed that would be the appropriate share, is matir niduya even though Lepel the Nizik is not satisfied with that amount. But Lepel, since that was the assessment that they made, that would be the appropriate share for Pius, which Bepashtus is not the same amount of money that he would have gotten maybe if he would have gone to a dentator in Eretz Yisrael, but nevertheless, Ben Shenispais, Ben Shleinispais, Lepel the matir niduya. V'chein, im tofas hanizik shir masheroi loy litel. The nizik takes the shir masheroi loy litel as ein mitzvim miyadi. So l'chura, what's the shir sheroi loy litel? There was no dintera. So l'chura, the pashtas would l'chura be that the shir masheroi loy litel knows what Bezdin would have assessed that should be the dmei apiyos. Even though Bezdin never assessed the piyos, but the nizik went ahead and grabbed from the mazik what Bezdin would have assessed would be the Dmei Apiyas. That l'chura with the Pashtim Shat. So Zay Mitziyim Miyodi. L'peil, the Sma says that it means even if he takes all the money that he would have been able to be Gzeichen Adintera, which is like a Chiddush. In other words, let's say there was a Ganef, and L'peil, if he would have been in a Dintera, he would have had to pay Kefil. But L'peil, Kefil, you have to have that Asher Ashin of Kim, that it has to be that Bezdin Paskins that is Chayiv Kefil. L'peil, there was no Chiyuv Bezdin on Kefil, and the Dayan Chutz La'aretz don't Paskin on Kefil. So nevertheless, comes out from here that you could grab the kefil, and you grab the kefil, you keep the kefil, which is a dvar chidush. L'chura, there was no chiyuv kefil yet. Halacha yudches. Yochid shehu mumche l'rabim is aval pi shehu don din imomenis yichidi. He's a mumche l'rabim as he was assigned. He was given. He's a mumche. He has rishus to be meir l'rabim, and as a result of that, it can be done din imomenis yichidi. But nevertheless, ein haidah b'fonav haidah b'bezdin. Nafilo yisomuch. Being moide b'fonav doesn't have a din of haidah b'bezdin. There got to be certain dinim that haidah b'bezdin has special dinim. We learned that l'moshel you write a star based on haidah b'bezdin, but if haidah b'fnei yochid mumchi, you wouldn't write a star. Aval hashleisha afal pi she'enon smuchim v'arei nedyetes ve'enon nikere b'melikim. Nevertheless, haidah b'fnei haidah b'bezdin. So in other words, when you're moide in front of a dayan mumcha, which is mumcha l'rabin, he has a right to paskin dinitera, but nevertheless it's not a bezdin. Masha'enkin, if you moide in front of shleisha edietis, so since they have a din of a bezdin, I'll call upon him a bezdin that has a right to be done dinim ominous, so mele the hidah b'fneim has a din of a hidah b'bezdin. V'chein, just like we're saying a hidah in front of them has a din of a hidah b'bezdin, ha'kaifer b'fneim, someone that's kaifer in front of these shleisha dayanim which are not mumcha, v'achar kav bo edim, and edim said that what he said was a lie, so the din is who's the kafrin. So in other words, there's a din when a person tainas a taina, and then lepel they find that he's light, and now he wants to taina a different taina, which that second taina he would have been neman. If he wouldn't have taina the first taina, he could have taina the second taina. But now lepel, since he was already a huchze kafra leisi moment, so that causes that he shouldn't have a right to taina the other taina. Now, when do you become a huchze kafrin? If you taina a taina bebezdin. Masha'enkin, if you taina a taina shalei bebezdin, so that's not called a huza kafrin. So the Rambam is saying, even though you taina a taina in front of a dayan, which that dayan has a din to be done dinim ominous, nevertheless, that doesn't have a din of a huza kafrin bebezdin, and therefore you can taina another taina, and you're not considered a huza kafrin. Kloli shel dava harehin li'inyan hidois v'alvois u'kiyetzben kimezdin hasmuchem l'chol dvarim, that a bezdin of shleisha, since they have a din of a bezdin, so they have a din of a bezdin smuchim. Legabi kol dover, which is the din of bezdin. So even though be'emes they could only be done dinim ominous, this bezin, which is a bezin shaladietis, they're not smuchim at all, but nevertheless they have a din of bezin legabi. If someone is made in front of them, has a din he was made in bezin, and someone is kafer in front of them has a din that he was kafer bebezin.